Hello and welcome to the Scott Stedman podcast. My name is Scott, and thank you guys so much for listening. Hopefully, you're having a great week. It is January 17th, and it is a nice sunny day here in Stanton, Virginia. It's also very cold. Apparently, we're supposed to be getting some snow tomorrow. We will see. Usually, snow either hits the valley very hard or it misses the valley very hard. So, we'll kind of look at all that. But today, I want to kind of talk about a funny story. My wife has been going back to school, and she's taken a class where it's an online class, but she does have to travel to be in person for some classes. And instead of going to the college that's right here, um, that's like 5 minutes away from us, she had to go to the extension, which is down in Roanoke. So, so yesterday was pretty hectic. I had to go and get dressed because not only was my wife. Let me go back. Not only was my wife happened to do this class, but then I had to. But then I also had to get dressed and get my hair done and get my beard all ready because the Stanton Innovation Hub was hosting free headshots for professionals in the area, actors, business personnel. So I'm like, hey, I haven't gotten a headshot since I was like 20 years old. So went there in studio, 621 Studios was responsible for the headshots, which was great. But I drove there and realized I was early. So then I drove to pick up my son from school. And then I'm thinking, okay, I'll drive to the house, drop him off because I had someone from my church able to watch Elizabeth while I was taking care of all this and while my wife was traveling to go to school. And I looked at the time. I'm like, dude, I'm not going to be able to drop you off at the house. We are going to fly. So we got there. We parked right outside of St. Francis of Assisi's church, and we ran down the sidewalk. And my son's laughing, having a great time. I'm panicking because I don't want to miss my appointment. But everything was good. Had a good session with 621 Studios. Great headshot. Everything was wonderful. Um, but in the midst of all this chaos, I also saw that there was some water issues in the city, and the water where I live in that area was shut off as the public works was trying to fix everything. So I get home and I turned on and the water and nothing's coming out, and I'm thinking, okay, well shoot, because we don't really go out to eat. We usually don't buy stuff. We really just cook our own food. And of course, if you're cooking stuff like I was going to cook pasta and meatballs, well, if you need to cook pasta, you need water, and there's no water. Um, so it's very so I was very bummed about that. So I'm trying to figure out, well, what can I do? And my wife was like, well, hey, just take one of the gift cards and go to a restaurant and eat at a restaurant with the kids. Oh, okay. Except I only have one car seat, so I can't take the kids. So I ended up ordering pizza, and by the time the pizza did get delivered, my son went to the bathroom to wash his hands, and I could just hear the kind of the machine gun going off in the bathroom where you turn on the water, especially after it's been turned off or if people are working on the water lines. It kind of goes like that's what it looks sound like a sprinkler. Probably machine gun wasn't the best word to use. Uh, but I began to really think about that because I haven't really drank a lot of soda. I've been kind of cutting off, and I had a soda stream for many many years and kind of contained myself to just one drink. So I'm only getting 50 calories as opposed to, a can of pop usually has about 120 calories. So it's almost half the calories in a can of pop. So I've been noticing that, a lot of it is just water. I'm drinking a lot more water. So when you didn't have that water, um, it was almost like, okay, well then what do you do? Um, Even when I was teaching wilderness survival in the camps back in Ohio, it was almost like, you can survive a pretty considerable amount of time without any food. But you can only survive maybe 3 days without water. So, water is very important. And I know, especially in the hustle and bustle in life, there's times where I could just be so busy that I can really start getting headachy. I start to feel weak. I start to feel tired. And I begin to realize, I went pretty much from the time I woke up to, the time I'm sitting down and having lunch. So about 6, 7 hours without drinking anything. No soda, no coffee, no water. I'm just up and I'm go, 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 go. And really was just like, oh, wow, this is important because if I don't drink any water, bad stuff could happen. Um, but then I began to think more about kind of more of a psychological and even a spiritual kind of this concept of water. I think about just this idea of hurry and how we live in such a very high pace, fast, busy culture. And people are just always on the go. And even if you're a parent, it's like get the kids up, get them dressed, get them ready, get them breakfast, pack their lunch, take them to school, come back, clean the house, do this, do this, do this. And it's just go, 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 go. Regardless if you have a job or not, people are just always busy. And and I can even think about the time when I first got a smartphone, how I got it because it was hard for me to keep track of all the dates working in the camp ministry. And now I'm thinking, man, this thing is just such a thing that just sucks the life out of me. It's like all these alerts. Here's what your schedule is. Here's some of the meetings you have coming up. Here's this. And it just always constantly reminds you of how busy you are and how even when you feel like you have time to really kind of sit down and maybe take a breather, that you can't because you have to prepare for the next big thing that you have to do, and you're constantly going. And I was even talking to my treasurer the other day because we just got annual reports done, finally kind of got stuff with the budget done. And I said, hey, kind of sent a message to her saying, hey, thank you so much, now make sure you take some time to rest. And the comments like is, well, I can't rest because now I have to get tithing reports out and end of year giving out and have to give all this stuff out. So I don't have time to rest yet. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like there's just crazy. And there's even sometimes where people go, Pastor Scott, why does it seem like you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off? And it's like, because there's just so much stuff to do. And I think that, when I think about water, I think of water as something that restores you, something that refreshes you. I can remember times as a kid where, like, if I went to the water fountain and it was nice, it was hot outside, there'd be times where I'd be standing by that water fountain and just drinking cold water, and just the way it felt hitting my mouth and going through my body, it just felt like it just kind of calmed me down. There was a calming to that water. And recently I got a book called by John Mark Comer called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry: How to Stay Emotionally Healthy and Spiritually Alive in the Chaos of the Modern World. And this was released in end of October of 2019. And I've only read like kind of the foreword by John Ortberg and even read the introduction. And already I'm like, man, this book is going to be great. This book is going to be a nice punch in the gut. This book is going to be very convicting, but man, it's going to be wonderful just to kind of say like, hey, rushing all the time is not good. I think about Jesus, and I think about him talking about being the stream of living water. And we kind of interpolate that in church, in a church context of being, the Holy Spirit flowing in us, the Holy Spirit being able to give us a power and try to help us to remember everything that Jesus taught and kind of reminds us all these things. But I'm also reminded in Jesus' teachings in Matthew, and let me pull it up real quick. I believe it is. I believe it is. Hold on. Oh, that's why. Sorry. You're trying to look up something and then you realize that I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it. I know it's in Matthew. I am 100% sure it's in Matthew. 100%. Yes, here we go. So it's in Matthew 11. And in Matthew 11, verse 28 says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And when I think about those words, there's that concept of when Jesus is talking to the Samaritan woman at the well, and he starts talking about this stream of living water. In some ways, I kind of find connections with that. If we have a stream of living water that's constantly restoring us and refreshing us, making sure we're hydrated, making sure that our bodies are taken care of, our emotional well-being is taken care of, our spiritual well-being is taken care of, then there is this thing where that's when we will finally achieve rest. And I think the concept of rest is not just something you do when you go to bed, because even kind of what John Mark Comer says in his book is that he would just be busy, and he was, had 6 church plants, and he would preach at all these different churches. And it's just like he was always constantly moving. And and he said that even when he had time to rest, he couldn't sleep because his mind was always going. And he says he's basically just laying on the couch watching like a cheesy cheesy whatchamacallit, a cheesy martial arts movie, and he's just laying there just mindlessly watching this film. And even he talked about how he met to talk to another like mega church pastor, and goes, "How do we do it? How do you do it?" And the mega church pastor says, "Well, it's easy. It's like running a marathon." And John Mark Comer's like, "But wait a minute, running marathons are hard." And then of course he writes that a few times later, that same pastor who gave him that advice ends up having an affair and is no longer a pastor anymore. And I think that's kind of the big thing, is that, as human beings, we live in a very chaotic world. We are always moving and rushing to the next thing. But it is so vitally important to take rest. I mean, I can even remember we had a couple ladies who ran an event at our church, and it was it was an undertaking. It was just 3 ladies who had a heart and a passion for this event, and it flourished, and it was wonderful, and it was great. And I kind of had to not necessarily get on them, but I kind of said, "Hey, make sure you take your Sabbath, make sure you take your rest," because I didn't want them to get burned out. I didn't want people to feel like that that their lives are falling apart because they're just feel like, okay, this next big event is over. Okay, now I have to go do these other things, or I have to take care of my family issues, or I got to take care of church issues, or I got to take care of my own issues, the things that I'm dealing with, my own mental health, my own physical health, my own spiritual health. And when I think about it, I go, well, what can we do to find rest? Where can we go to get that restoration? And for me, the answer is simple. We got to go to Jesus. We got to take some time and really commune with him through prayer, through reading of his word, through meditating, so that we can really find the rest that we need, that living water, that easy yoke, that easy burden that we can have, that we no longer have to carry. And, I feel like even though we have so much advancements, I feel like people are just in a hurry, um, are too much in a hurry to die in a way, or doing things that's going to kill them, that we don't take the time to really enjoy living. So take the time to enjoy living. Take the time to be refreshed so that you can have water for your souls. So that's just kind of some insight that I was able to get this week. Hopefully that helps you. Hopefully that speaks to you. Again, if you have not subscribed, you can go to any podcast server and just search for Scott Stedman Podcast. You can then subscribe. You can also follow me on my Instagram page, the official Scott Stedman Podcast. There's also the Scott Stedman Podcast Facebook page you can search for, even my website, thescottstedman.com. And then, of course, I'm starting to slowly put most of my stuff on YouTube now. I have my own personal YouTube page that has not only just the podcast, but also the messages I preach and some other things that I have done over the years that I'm just trying to upload, which is kind of a big undertaking. So again, you can find me there. And again, if you like this podcast, make sure you rate it, review it, so other people can find it, and hopefully they can be blessed by this podcast as well. All right, guys, have a wonderful weekend, and I'll be on next week. Bye.